Hey everyone, this is Marty Butler with Evolve. We'll just give everybody a couple of minutes to join, and then we'll get this month's webinar started. Still got some people coming in. All right, good. Seeing some familiar names. All right, that should be good. Let's kick this thing off. So good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Marty Butler. I'm a customer experience manager here at Evolve. And believe it or not, we're already to the end of September. And want to talk about some of the new features for our products. I got Adam Hyun on board here to walk through that. Before we get into the product features, I got a couple of plugs that I want to get in. Let me figure it out. Next slide. Okay. So I got an updated list here of some helpful links and truncated list of email addresses here. If you have any questions on this or you need these, you can hit me up. My email's right there at the top. So I'll send these directly out to you if you want those. Noted on some of the new links down at the bottom, we have the 6.0 release notes and the new features. And also, if you have not logged into the new license portal and set up your entitlements, please do that. All right, and next thing is MEP Force is coming up. So just wanted to share that and see, could I get a show of hands of how many people are planning to go to MEP Force or want some more information? Awesome, Jason, okay. James, sweet. Evolve will be there in Force, so all of our salespeople will be there. If you would like to meet with them or meet with us, have any questions, just reach out to them directly. If you don't know who your salesperson is, I'll put Brad's email in the chat here before the session is over, and you can reach out to him directly. He'll get you set up. These costs are not, these are not ours. This is just passed through the MEP Force, but pretty standard. And then of course, any questions, you can reach out to David. He's our marketing manager here, and he's got the scoop on everything MEP Force. All right. Any questions on that before I turn it over to Adam? Cool. All right, well, let me introduce Adam here, and then he'll take you through a few of the new features. He's our product manager, the master of everything, new things in Revit and Evolve MEP. So Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marty. Let me share my screen. Oh, yeah, I think you guys stop sharing, then I can take it over.
Sorry about that.
Oh, good. All right, everybody see my Revit screen here?
Yes, sir, looks good.
Cool. All right, I'm just gonna pull up the chat. So if somebody's asking questions, I can see it. 1 second. All right. So I know we're having new people joining each month as we get the word out that these are back on. So if you don't know me, my name's Adam Hyun. I'm product manager for the Revit products. I've been with Evolve since we launched, 4 or 5 years ago, specifically focused on the electrical product, but now I just kind of handle both. So what I wanted to walk through today was some of the 6.0 features and how they connect to our web development efforts. So anybody that's been updated since the 5.4 update, you have this project that you have to assign your Revit project to. Now you with 6.0, you'll see there's a whole bunch of other stuff coming in here. So I kind of want to go over what that all is, how it kind of starts to start to try to connect the dots there, what's happening and what you can expect going forward. But more importantly, show what you can do today with some of these tools. I'm just sorry, I'm just reading the question, but I don't think it's making up. Okay, on the project front, yes, and this comes up a lot about assigning um, Foresight projects to every Revit project, that type of thing. Reach out to us. We can help you out. There are some things you can do that can alleviate some of that. Okay, I'll follow up with you. That was so tough. All right, I'll follow up. Now the changes with the 6.0, there's some enhancements that you can do some different things with. So we'll follow up with you. So I'm going to walk through, like I said, kind of what the whole process looks like, and I'll try to not go too fast through anything, but just kind of go through all the different steps. So what I want to do, sorry, I'm going to try to read these questions as they come in, just in case I don't get ahead. Miles from other trades, way to mute this feature. It's annoying. Yeah. Yeah, Chad. If you can, actually, Marty or Andrew, anyone else that wants that's having issues with the assigned projects and it's becoming annoying, please just comment in the field in the chat, and we'll make a list and we'll reach out to you to go over it. All right, so first thing I'm going to do here is come to the main website. So when you come in here, everybody, once you update it to 5.4, you have this admin section. This is kind of where you manage all your licenses, or your company admin would manage licenses and all that kind of stuff. What you also will see for anybody who logs in, even if you're not an admin, is you'll see this little design module. So this module here is basically the Revit users module for the website. So we're working on other features for other modules. A lot of these different features or modules will have tools in them that are also going to be accessible to Revit users. It's the same feature, but it's in two different places. Probably confusing. That'll make sense once I walk through it. But I just wanted to explain what the design module is. So this is you as the Revit user, this is your module that you have access to. When I open up the design module, some of the common things you're going to see is the same company and projects type setup, very similar to what is in admin. So you're able to create projects and assign project members and all that kind of stuff right from this design module here. So what I'm going to do is create a project, and let's call it customer meeting. And I will create the project. Now, when you create a project, one of the things that you want to do is probably jump in and actually assign your project members. So think of this, it's very similar to what you do in BIM 360. I think when you set up projects, yeah, you got to invite people to them. This is a common thing that people have been hung up on, where you create a project and then not everybody can see it. So what you can do is when you click on a project, it turns it on. Another way you can access it is going through here. So if I go to my EM customer meeting, when I click on it there, it activates that project. Now from here within my project members, I could invite additional users. And really that just allows them to have access to that project, both in Revit and then obviously on the website. So I created my project here, and one of the first tools we linked into the Revit application was the ability to create a location breakdown structure, basically a very simple utility, basically to define your areas. So when I jump into that module here, you'll see on the left, I have my location. On the right is where I can actually create work phases. I'm not going to talk much about work phases because this is still early on. It's kind of layered in there, but not fully. I'm going to focus on locations here. So think of the top level as my project. So every project has at least one location, which is just the project as a whole. From there, what I can do is create more locations. If I click the little hamburger menu here, I can add floors, zones, or even sub-locations, and I'll explain what that is. There's also a button up here that says new locations, and what this allows you to do is basically create, let's say if you're doing a multi-story building and it's divided up into quadrants, so you have floors 1 through 5 and its areas A, B, C, and D. This would allow you to create, multiple floors. You could come and say, okay, I need 5 floors, and this is my prefix and delimiter for the floors and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to walk through this modal right now. We did get some feedback on it, so we have a redesign on some of this to make it a little easier to navigate through. But what I'm going to do is just something really simple, just for the sake of demoing how this all comes together with Revit. So I'm going to come in here and say I need a floor, and I'll call this floor 1, and then I'll put a zone there, A, area A, and I'll do one more zone B, area B. Likewise, I mean, I could, I could add, oh, that's not what I want to do. I want to, where do I want to go? New floor below. So I can put 2 here, floor 2, oops. And then I could do the same zones below here if I wanted to. So I'm just going to stop here. So I have a very simplistic structure. Got floors, I got areas. The location system, what this allows you to do as it relates to a location breakdown structure is it's in order to create kind of like a division on how a project is broken out during a certain time frame. So you think of this like when they do pour schedules on a job site, you may be pouring the job in quadrants or in halves, left half, east half, west side. And then when they actually do the rough in, they're roughing it in quadrants, A, B, C, and D. So what you end up with is a project that has a floor, but during the initial phase, it's broken up into 2 halves. And then later on in the project, it's broken up into quadrants. So it's just it's a way to create almost these different, what we call location systems at your project. So I'm not going to get into that because it's just getting really, technical for a setup. I'm just trying to keep it simplistic, but that's what that location system is intended for. All right, so I've created my location. So in Revit, when you open up the Foresight project or you open up a new project for the first time, you get this prompt to assign your project. So here, what I'm going to do is find my EM customer meeting project and hit OK. So that project is assigned. And you'll see I have a locations panel here. So I'm going to turn off materials right now because I don't want to use it. And I'm going to keep this activated. And now when I hit sync project, what you'll see is I have Foresight locations, Revit locations, and quantity map. When I actually sync this, you'll see the Foresight locations will bump up. So now I have 5 Foresight locations and 2 Revit locations. So what this is telling me is on the website, the project I set up, I created 5 different location zones, or however you want to think about it. In Revit, it's basically counting my locations using, our location manager tool. So there's 1, there's 2. So it's basically saying, hey, you have 5 on the website, you have 2 in your model. The quantity mapped is the ability to connect those 2. So out of the 5 locations, what's in your project and what does it mean? Like, what is this? So the way we kind of map locations is in the location manager here. So we created a quick access to it. So I pull up my location manager. So you'll see in my model, I made 2 locations, which are those boxes in the background there, A1, B1. So in my mind, I probably would have called it 1A, 1B, but you know, A1, B1. So first floor A, first floor B. You'll see with the location manager, I have a Foresight location column. Now, if I hadn't mapped anything, this would just be a blank cell that you couldn't do anything. But now that I've mapped, I have a drop-down menu, and you'll see I'll see the kind of I would call it like a tree view, but basically the relationship of the 5 areas that it's saying I have. So I have floor 1 area A, floor 1 area B, 2 and 2A. So what we're doing here is basically just assigning this, like, okay, well, in my model, it's called A1. Well, what is that? Oh, it's level 1 area A. And again, for B, it's level 1 area B. So I apply that, and now I've mapped those locations. So now you come back here, you'll see 2 areas of our locations are mapped. Now, once I've mapped those, in order to assign all the elements within that space, I have to use my assign location function here. So I'll go ahead and run that. And I'll just do entire project here. Get my warning, it says it may take a long time. And they're mapped. So when I click on an element, what you'll see in that is, what am I looking for? There it is. So we have a parameter. We'll actually have 2 location parameters. One is the location parameter for just Revit, which is what I call B1. And then the other location parameter is my Foresight ID. So you don't need to use the website to do, a location tool or any of that stuff. So it's just kind of, if you're using the website, we have a specific field for that. And this is going to be used for sorting and filtering and things in Revit. So we're just assigning the common parameter values. But now I have basically my A1 area here, or this is B1 area here. So all the elements are in area B, and then all the elements are in area A here, and then these are just unassigned. So now that I've assigned that, the next thing that I want to do in the next area that we have access to on the website is my takeoff pad. So when I come down here, this is if you saw what we call our Gen 1 materials app, this is very similar to that. The idea behind the takeoff pad as it relates to Revit is basically being able to send your material quantities to basically a grid where someone can then take them to the next phase. So you got to go through a procurement process. Most of the times the quantities out of Revit aren't 100%. So you either need to add in missing parts that weren't modeled or adjust box quantities and lengths to actual purchase quantities and things like that. So the purpose of this takeoff tool as a big picture is to facilitate quantifying your materials in different methods. Revit is one of those methods which we get quantities from. So there will be others on the website. So you'll see right now, this is blank, and I want to bring my bill of material here. So that's the second panel here for materials. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit. I think last time when I went over this, I went over some of the data profiles and how that's all set up. So I'm going to go through some of that again for those who weren't there. I'll try not to spend too much time on it, but it's good to get a refresher on how these data profiles work. So I'm not going to keep that off for right now. What I want to do is go through this profile. Just also worth mentioning, I meant to say this at the beginning, the model I'm in right now is our sample project. And for those who don't know, if you go into, I think the admin module and you go to your company properties, there is a download link for sample files. This is a self-extracting zip folder, and one of the things that's in it is a sample mechanical model that you see here. So everything I'm doing here is right from that model, and you can do right out of the box because it's all pre-configured. All right, so back to the profile. So what I want to find is my materials profile here. So just to start at the beginning here, what is a data profile? What do we use it for? And what am I looking at on the screen exactly? So think of a data profile as a way to define a container, and you can specify kind of what elements go into that container, and then you can specify what parameters that you start doing things with. So the top group here up in this area is a listing of all the different profiles. So I have a materials profile here, and basically there's two main parts of a profile: your element filter, and I would say your selection scope. And you see here, so the element filter is what you see everywhere in our product. It's the filter that actually tells you what elements you want to grab in this condition. So this one is just basically a bunch of MEP categories whose description is not blank. The selection scope is, as you drop down, it's pretty straightforward. It's just how do you want to grab these elements? Do you want to grab the entire project by view, by selection? Do you want to choose your method? So for this purposes, for the materials profile, I'm doing entire project because I don't want to remove things. I want to send everything. What makes this profile usable for materials and is this third, I'll call it the third column here, which basically, so we have a pipe server integration, Evolved Materials now shows up. So this is basically the column that references other kind of external tools per se, but by selecting this, I have access to all the columns that are available in the import. So that's the profile at the top level. So again, element filter, selection scope. The bottom part is now getting into what parameters I want to have or use and what I want to do with them. So where you can actually visualize what this ends up being is through our Find Elements tool. So this is a new utility in 6.0. When you open it, you may have to refresh your list to populate your profiles. But if I select my materials profile, I can run that. And this is basically what the profile returned. And if I jump to that profile and kind of move this off to the side, hopefully I can make sense of this. All right, so what you're seeing here is your column name, quantity name, etc., quantity name, unit of measure, and then the parameter that you're referencing. So in this case, my quantities are just set to a fixed 1 because everything's a quantity of 1. I'm referencing my evolved description parameter. In this model, I'm using parameter sync to generate that description, which you see here. My unit of measure, one thing I did with this field is I put a PowerShell script to it. It really is just delimiting between linear foot items and non-linear foot items. So it's just a simple way to distinguish that. And then the rest of these are pretty straightforward. The ends just mean I'm not referencing anything. It's just it's a non-existent parameter. So you get a null value. You have to define something for these fields. So it's just a way to say I'm not using it. Most of these are not really exposed on the website yet. So you don't really, there really is no point of signing to them at this point. So again, down here, column names just reference the actual columns. The parameters are what return the results. One thing you can notice is you see my length values are returning in decimal feet. The use display value is what changes that. So if I wanted to check that box, and refresh that, I'm now going to get like a traditional, like, foot and inches type format for my length. So that's what the use display value does in this scenario. For the purposes of syncing the thing to the website, you don't want that. We want to send decimal feet. One other thing to point out is you can actually see the location GUIDs applied to certain elements. So what's nice about the find elements tool in relation to, like, say, this materials profiles, I can actually look at the data that I'm going to send to the website before I send it. Hopefully that makes sense for the profile. So again, the sample project has this profile already made. If you want to use it on a different project, you can just click on it and hit the export button, which will export the single profile out. And then you can bring it into other projects if you want to do that. So I'm going to hit OK here, and I'm going to go back to my Foresight properties and turn on this materials panel. So by shutting these off, as you saw, basically just deactivates them. You don't use them. If you don't set up anything on your project here, it doesn't pull anything in. If you don't set up profiles, it doesn't push anything out. So it still doesn't work anyway, but you can turn them off. So I'm going to turn on materials, and there's my profile. So I'll apply my changes, and now I'll do a sync. So you'll see it'll do my locations first. Now it's coming back and doing materials. All right. So you'll see sent 514 elements, and I will jump back to my project here. So again, keep in mind, I have to be in that project. And there's this parts. So from here, so it processed 514 elements, but what it will do on the website is actually roll that up by description. So your quantities are totals, not individual line items. But again, like basically the fields from the profile, trade size, manufacturer, catalog number, those fields are defined right in your profile. So if I pull that back up, trade size, manufacturer. So you'll see in manufacturer, I just hard-coded generic at this point because we don't have our catalog layered in and all that stuff coming yet. So here, everything just shows up as generic, but this will take any format. I just did it for the sake of putting generic there. So basically at this point, you can bring in all your parts, you can summarize them, you can grab these fields and actually export them to CSV from here if you wanted to. Right now, there's only 2 other features that are enabled here, or 3. Export is one of them. You have the ability to filter. So this is where my locations comes in, and I can say, okay, let me see area B, level 1. There's my list, or area, oops, area A, right? A lot less stuff. So I'm able to filter based on my locations. Obviously, more filters will be coming in soon. Again, I can export, and then the next thing I can do is actually map to different pads. So the idea of mapping to pads is basically creating like an organized grouping of elements or parts that you're going to do things with. And it's also the Revit tab is always just what's in Revit. But when you want to start manipulating quantities and start adding things, you're going to do that in other pads. So let's just say in this example, floor 1, area A, I'm taking this whole I'm going to say, grab these, whoops, sorry, make a pad, call this floor 1A. Jump back here, so I can grab these elements and say, map to pad, floor 1A. And when I jump over here, there's my elements. So that's where it stops today. What will come into here is the ability to add items. Actually, you can add write-in items. It should let you write in something, I think. And then, yeah, you can specify your unit of measure, whatever it is. And I should be able to enter a quantity. I don't know where that thing went. Yeah, that may be broken. So I think for all purposes, this is kind of where it ends. The other tools and stuff like that will be coming in, but yeah, that's kind of the website part. So again, this is all available to anybody who's using Evolve now, just from the website and the design module. For future enhancements on this, we're probably pushing out updates. We just pushed one out last week that fixed some administrative bugs that we had. I would say 3 to 4 weeks, we're probably pushing out updates to the website. So it was a big start to just kind of get some things first starting live with locations and takeoff. But now from here, there's going to be probably a lot faster development because we had to just spend the effort to get the data in line from the model to the website. So definitely be looking forward to that. And I think each month I'll try to cover what's new on the website as well, just to keep everybody up to date on that. One other thing that I wanted to touch on, let me see if catalog is in here. Oh yeah. So I think they did push out the catalogs because yeah, I have it. So we have started with pushing out our electrical and mechanical catalogs. So this is the catalog setup thing where you're able to customize a parts catalog and all that. Basically what we're doing is, I think we have a 30,000 part catalog for electrical. And then we're taking basically the origin database for mechanical and using those as default catalogs. We'll be updating them and enhancing them, but those are our defaults that we're creating. But the tool itself will allow you to customize that. Oh, but what I wanted to show was jumping back to Revit. One thing you're able to do with the profiles is actually specifically for materials is assign more than one profile. So let's just say you needed one for duct, one for pipe. So I'll call this duct material. And I'll change my element filter here. And I'll just say this is fabrication ductwork. And I'll create another one. This is pipe material. Actually, what I'm going to do to save some time is just take the duct material and I'll copy it. And I'll just change my element filter to pipe work. Oops. So this will not be duct, this will be pipe. And I'll just change the, all right. Let's say for duct, let me see what I want to use. Let's use, yeah, let's just use product long description for that. So for my duct item name, I'll just use product long description. And for piping, what do I want to use? I'll just use something different. I think there's like a product short description, or what is there? Product. Yeah, I'll do material. I'm just going to pick 2 different attributes just so they're different. Product material description. Product material description. Okay. So basically what I did is I created 2 profiles One duct, one pipe, again, being driven by the element filter. Duct profile is just duct. Pipe profile here is just pipe. And for the item name, I'm using material description and long description, just for the sake of having two different things. So again, I can go back to my find elements tool, grab my duct material, kind of see what I get here. There's my product long description that I used. And if I go to my pipe material, I get all my material types. Obviously, this is not a description you want to use, but for the sake of showing two different profiles and potentially having two different parameter fields that you're navigating through, you can make a third profile, say just for hangers or something, if you use a different parameter for an attribute or something. So I got those two profiles, and basically when I'm in my properties here, I can then say duct and pipe, and both those profiles will send. So if I go ahead and sync my project, now it drastically reduced the counts because I cut down my element filter a lot. But what I'll do is go back to the takeoff pad. And there we go. So refresh it. So it's a bunch of, actually this filter is probably still applied. Oh no, it's not. It's because it rolled it up. So it's just a bunch of materials, and then there's your duct and stuff. So pipe and duct are in here. I just used terrible description fields to do it. Now, one thing to note on this is you'll see the list condensed. And it, again, this list is always what's in Revit, and we are tracking by unique element ID. So we didn't add any new items here. We actually modified what was already there because the element IDs haven't changed from my initial upload. Because I reduced things through my element filter, as far as the website's concerned, those things no longer exist. So we remove them completely. But any modification to items from Revit to the website is tracked by unique element ID. But I think that covers what I wanted to show. I will leave it up for questions and see if there's any questions on what I showed or any questions in general we can look at. Main goal of Foresight design. This seems like a construction workflow, not a design workflow. It is, yeah, it is a construction workflow. So the purpose of the design module may not be the best name, but it's specific. It's access, or it's a module that is part of your Evolve subscription for Revit. So basically you buy Evolve for Revit, you get this design module, and the design module is just going to have various tools and whatever web features that we create. The design module will have access to some of those. So a lot of as you point out, this is a construction workflow that we're supporting. Through that workflow, people on the design side or the detailing side interact with PMs, field, prefab. You're interacting with all these different departments to do various things. So there'll be like chatting tools back and forth. There'll be ways of sending information to different people on the website. So hopefully that explains it. But at the end of the day, for Revit users, this is your module that you'll have access to. If or when we launch these other products, if your company buys a shop product, material product, whatever, you may not get a license of that product, but you could still contribute to the bill of material, obviously, and by either uploading it from Revit or refining it to a takeoff pad. So it's just a way to differentiate features to different people, I guess. Hopefully that works on it. Is Evolve working on a seismic family that can be used for piping and ductwork? Yeah, so we actually are working on seismic families, and right now it is tentative for our next release, which will be just before MEP Force or at MEP Force or whatever around that time. And yeah, actually, uh, that could be a topic for next month. I probably should be able to even demo that feature next month. Um, so, and the seismic, it'll be a seismic family. We'll probably create 2 or 3 different types of generic configurations, assemblies, seismic assemblies. But they'll be able to be modified and changed. They'll have nested points in them and things like that. So they'll be kind of generic, but we'll try to get something close. Do users who don't use Evolve need a license in order to view the design module? Yeah, okay, so to answer that question, yeah, so users that aren't on, aren't using Revit wouldn't have access to really any of this unless you can invite users from an admin perspective, but the admin would have to assign them an electrical or mechanical license in order for that design module to appear. So that's how it would show up there. You would have to be assigned, and it's just like with these other modules. Once they start coming online, it's the admins basically. Think of it as another entitlement, but this one just comes with Revit. For locations, can you assign scope boxes instead of drawing new areas? Yeah, that's a good question. You can't assign scope boxes as far as using the scope box to define the boundary or the area. So we're not using scope boxes to do that. I potentially something we could look into using. I notice I've seen in the past, typically, if say if this was my building or whatever, a lot of times you'll position scope boxes, something like that, where they overlap because you always want that match line to show up. Um, the intent of the location tool here is really not to have overlapping boundaries. You can, but at some point, elements are not going to end up where you want them to be. So the intent there is not to have overlapping boundaries, which is why we did not go the scope box way, at least for now. So it's a family. For takeoff, this is yeah. Okay. So for takeoff, so a couple things on that question. So we did create, a report manager, which is separate from the website in order to generate reports and customize reports and things like that. Um, so the so I because it was the question mentions creating reports. You don't need the website to do it. This kind of facilitates reporting potentially, and I can certainly go through some of this today if there's time. Somebody wants to, but the purpose of the takeoff pad is it's to facilitate the process from, say, detailing in Revit to actual procurement of those items. And like I said, typically what you're dealing with is a relatively partial BOM from Revit. And at some point, somebody, whether it's field, PM, purchasing, combination of 3 and everyone else, they review these material lists that come from Revit and they get modified and they get passed down and get purchased. There's obviously different purchasing habits among companies, whether you're doing bulk buyouts and all this kind of stuff. But the takeoff pad is to facilitate that process. So we're connecting it with Revit to utilize Revit as a takeoff tool. Essentially, it's a tool to generate quantities, And the website will then provide tools for, like I mentioned, box roundings or length roundings based on purchase lengths. People may want to actually bulk buy steel or something by weight. There'll be tools and functions to be able to do those types of things and create those types of reports and essentially pass the information downstream through a process where you're not necessarily losing the data and where it came from and how it got from A to B. So is it similar to M Suite's BIM Pro? Honestly, I don't know where BIM Pro starts or stops. I would say we're not necessarily, there's definitely overlap between obviously competitive products. It's not necessarily what they're doing. We're really just trying to facilitate the construction process from, you know, detailing, coordination efforts, to fabrication, to installation. Can you visually see the items in the bomb takeoff using the website? That's a good question. Today, no, you cannot, but we are developing our Forge viewer. It's in development now, and we will be able to link it. Soon there will be an actual Forge viewer on our website, so you will be able to do that and other things, obviously. So it's a good question. Are you able to have multiple Revit models assigned to one Foresight project, like we had duct model and pipe model? Yes, absolutely. You can have more than one model assigned, and the Revit tab here will take both. One of the things that will be layered in here that you would want, if you're doing that, is a way to probably filter by source model. So if you had a pipe model, duct model, you'd want to filter for that. Those types of filters are not there, but you can do that. So there's no limitation to how many projects you can assign to a Foresight project, how many Revit projects you can assign to a Foresight project. All right, any other questions? Can you all stop moving buttons around? They
That one a
hover.
little bit.
So you can blame me for moving all the buttons around. I know it was not going to be well received. I think I mentioned this on one of the calls early on a month or two ago. So I'll explain why I did it, right, wrong, or indifferent. There was a reason. So obviously we have electrical mechanical product. Our tools are developed mainly from core functions, meaning they use the same feature in both products. Spooling, locations, family hangers, points. Those are all core features between the products. Then there's also unique features. Mechanical has ITM hangers, electrical doesn't. We don't use ITMs. Annotations, we don't do annotating spools. So you have these two types of features. So the whole purpose of the button movement and all that kind of stuff was, one, to basically create a standard for where we put buttons and how they look across products. So at the end of the day, when you're toggling between electrical and mechanical, there's a lot of similarity. And now when you actually look at them, all the buttons are almost are pretty much in the same places between products. So it was just a purpose of standardizing. We did a few other things, changing icons, what they look like, changing some button names. It wasn't pleasant, but we had to do it for the sake of standardizing the product. So that's why we did it. Yeah, Marty, you see Zach's question about getting a recording. I don't know. I assume we are sending these recordings out. I don't know how we do that or who handles that.
Yeah, I usually do that. So that's a question I get all the time. And I'll get a list of everybody that was on both of the webinars and send a link out, like a Dropbox link or SharePoint or something, so that you can access the whole recording.
Something too, Marty, that we should be looking into is utilizing our message center.
Okay.
And everybody should actually be getting messages. We haven't sent many of them out, but a few have gone out. You'll get them in Revit. You'll see the little icon here. We'll have an unread message, and basically when you click it, it'll just bring you to this page here. So what we can do, Marty, is potentially send out that download link right through this message center, and then anybody, even if they're not attending this, they'll get it.
That's a good idea. Okay. Yeah, I'll note that down, and yeah, we'll test that out.
All right. Any other questions? We have a few more minutes. If there's any features and anybody wants to go over or anything like that, feel free to post it. Otherwise, I'll give it a minute or two and we can wrap it up. Can we have one of these meetings but cover Revit tools buttons rather than stuff for the website? Yes, absolutely. So Colorizer, ITM layers. Yep. Yeah, so I definitely will cover buttons. I just figured it would be a good topic to cover the website. So I don't plan on spending as much time on website stuff. This is supposed to be more Revit focused. Josh, I'm not sure what you want to cover on ITM hangers, but I will show Colorizer real quick. So Colorizer Tool is basically our utility that covers how you'd handle coloring through Revit filters. Typically, this is more of a different type of utility for doing graphical overrides. The difference here is it's element filter driven and view filter driven. So what you're used to now is you create some type of color scheme, typically in a view template, and then you assign a view template to your various views. The way this would work is, let's just say here I have, my supply and chilled water colors. My view control is defined here. In this case, I'm just saying all views, but here I could say something like view name contains like layout, I don't know. But depending on how you name your views and things like that, you could trigger coloring rules based on view name. So the example I usually show for what you can do with Colorizer is our points things here. Let me just check these. Whoops. Update this model. So I'll show the concept and then I can explain the rule. So say if I'm placing points here, yep, make sure I'm in the right tool. So whatever it is, test. So I'm just going to place some points and you'll see they turn blue. So if I go to my point manager and then I number these and export all my points. All right, now I'll just export them. So by exporting my points, I'm going to automatically assign a status to point exported, and you'll see the colors should change in the background. And now they're green. And then if I come into this point and I move it, you'll see it turns red. So the coloring scheme here, whoops, if I go to the right tool, the coloring scheme is point placed, turn blue, point exported, turn green, point modified, turn red. And that's all being driven by the element filter. Let me just maximize this. So if I go to like exported filter here, whoops, not that one, this one. you'll see it's just isolating it down to my family, my EV point family, with a status of exported. So each filter here is basically the same one, just with a different status. So I took advantage of our point manager, which automatically assigns statuses, and basically created a color scheme so that my view reflects those. And I can visually see now, if I see a red point, it tells me it was once exported and now it's changed, right? So it's kind of a cool visual. Now what I could do here is on my views, this would be probably a more likely example where you have point specific views, you have everything shut off but points or something like that. So this is where you may have like a view name that contains point. So what that would do, let me just do that to all of them. I'll just do two, it's fine for the sake of time. So if I take my level 1 view and I duplicate this. Oh, let me just clear my rules because I duplicated the view. Hold on. Come on. Oh, here it is. There we go. Okay, so now I'll move this point. You'll see, oh, that's probably not the point color I modified. Let me place these. These should not color. Oh, it's calling me a liar. What is this doing? Sorry, just gonna try to point contains points. This one contains point. This should not color. I'll have to probably look into this. Oh, not sure why it's being colored here. Well, I'll have to look at it. I'm probably doing something wrong, but the idea there is this view does not contain the word point, so it shouldn't be coloring. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. But for the sake of time, I'm just not going to look into it. But basically, if I were to take this and say, put the word point on it, and then refresh the view, the colors should activate. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here, but I'll look into it. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, it's a rule-based coloring utility. Define your element filter, defines the elements, and then your view filter defines your views, and then you can color things. One thing to note here are these other checkboxes. So these kind of came in, I think, in 5.4 to basically we had to put them in because it depends on when certain events were running in the background and how these rules were being run and what order it happens. We were getting mixed results. Sometimes you'd modify something and it wouldn't color or what have you. Basically, these features fix all that. Essentially, you could turn these all on and you won't see any difference and everything should work fine. So eventually these will probably even just get removed and we'll just keep them all on all the time. But because we were in the middle of a release, we just threw these as options. So we didn't screw anybody up. So yeah, love to see it. I'm going to cover each panel in the ribbon, sleeves, cover sleeves. Yeah. Yeah, I can the suggestion on topics for next meeting, I can certainly pick a panel and cover that. I'll end up doing that. If you do have specific topics or anything, feel free to reach out to us and say, hey, can you cover X, Y, Z on the next meeting? Otherwise, I'll probably end up doing just that, is taking a chunk of tools at a time that kind of go together and walking through them. And yes, we'll send out a recording for this. Yeah, reports definitely is a good one to cover. So for next month, I definitely will cover reports. These utility things, I covered them last month, I believe. They get a little technical, so I'll try not to like do too much like technical stuff. I'll try to mix it up, so at least not everybody's going to use these tools here. So I'll try to mix it up with some of these simpler tools. But all right, so we're at time, and I think we're all set. So thanks everybody for coming, and our next one will be the end of next month, last Wednesday of next month. So I'll see you all then.
Thanks again for attending, everybody. As always, good turnout and great questions. We appreciate it. Appreciate you guys staying engaged. And we'll talk to you on the next one.